Joining me now is someone who's worked closely with the new UK PM, and I want to know what we can expect from this new leader. Joining me now, of course, is one of our regulars, LNP Senator for Queensland, James McGrath. James, great to have you on the show. Remind people your history with Boris Johnson.
I first started working with Boris back in 2007 with Lynton Crosby. Lynton was campaign director and I was his 2IC on the mayoral campaign for London, which was held in early May 2008, and then I went on to work for him for a brief period of time at City Hall. Before that, I worked for the Tory party for a number of years.
Yeah, look, and I've met him a couple of times when I've been overseas with various Liberal leaders. People who mistake his eccentric, can I say, very unique British sort of style and think he is a buffoon will fall into the trap of not recognising his intelligence. So I found him, when the door was closed and the TV cameras were away, to be one of the most engaging and well-considered, highly political Brits I've come across in politics. Was it a surprise to you that he's ended up Prime Minister?
No, not at all. You've hit the nail on the head. His persona sometimes of this sort of Womble of Wimbledon, you know, the ruffled hair, the unkempt suit, he is one of the smartest political brains of his generation. You do not become Prime Minister of one of the fourth largest economy in the world, a country with nuclear weapons, unless you are a very smart person. You know, Boris has been in frontline politics since, 2001, when he first won his then seat. This guy is smart, he knows what he wants to do, and he's the right person at the right time.
How's he going to manage this, the current deadline of October 31? Because his fortunes all rest on doing what all the others have not been able to do, get out of the European Union and get out, as he says, with no deal if necessary. His base is behind him, at least this far, but if he doesn't achieve this aim, of course, his base is susceptible on the left to the Lib Dems and on the right to Nigel Farage. How's he going to make it happen?
Through two ways. Who he appoints to his cabinet. When you look when Boris was Mayor of London, he cut crime, cut council tax and improved public transport usage by making sure he had a strong team of people around him, led by a guy called Zudi Lister, who was the former leader of Wandsworth Council, one of the flagship Tory councils. So he'll make sure his cabinet is very, very capable, and he will delegate to them, you know, key responsibilities. He's not going to be a micromanager in the Kevin Rudd school. And what he will also do is he's going to focus on the issue you've talked about, Brexit. He is going to live or die by Brexit. This is a new Prime Minister who knows that the four previous British Tory Prime Ministers have effectively lost their premierships because of Europe. Europe is kryptonite to Tories. Thatcher, Major, Cameron and May all effectively had to stand down or lost their positions because of Europe. And it's going to be crash or crash through in terms of a hard Brexit. The party is split, the country is split. But he's got that force of personality that'll be able to, I think, bring the party together and bring the country together, because the party has to decide, who do they want to be Prime Minister? Jeremy Corbyn or Boris Johnson? You know, someone who is a Brexiteer and will get a deal at some point, somehow, by 31 October, because if they don't do that, there could be an early election and Jeremy Corbyn could have the keys to 10 Downing Street, and no one wants that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. No one even on the left wants Jeremy Corbyn. He was straight out of the blocks last night, put out a tweet in relation to the election of Boris Johnson. I'll pop it up the screen for people, but it's all about trying to frame him as the top end of town, as yet another sort of Eton Prime Ministers in the Conservative, or at least the recent Conservative mould. I think they need to go back to the shopkeeper, Margaret Thatcher, if they really want to get back in the game. But it's interesting there because I think it will be a real challenge for Boris. If he can pull off Brexit, then Corbyn has nowhere to go. Central to this will be Nigel Farage. How does he deal with Nigel Farage? Because Farage is an outbreak on the right of the Conservative Party, really, of people not dissimilar to where we were under Malcolm Turnbull, where people feel let down by their own side and they've gone walkabout.
That's a very good analogy. And I think with Boris becoming Prime Minister, that a lot of people on the right will go, hang on, we were parking our votes with the Brexit Party and with Nigel. Now that we've got a Tory who believes in Brexit, who believes in Britain, has the energy back in charge, you'll see their votes shift across. So yeah, the Brexit Party did amazingly well in the recent European elections, and also quite well in where they stood in some other local by-elections. But what this means is that I think you'll see the Brexit Party peter out a little bit. Yes, Nigel Farage has this force of personality, but he's never going to be Prime Minister. The choice will be between Boris and Corbyn, and the Tory voters on the right, they don't want Corbyn as Prime Minister. You'll see them shift back to the Tory Party in droves. You'll see the donors return, so the Tory Party is going to be this well-funded machine, whether we have an early election this year or in a few years' time when it naturally comes around.
And look, that's very much the model of Scott Morrison. No one would have given him much of a chance a few months going into elections, certainly not long after he took over from Malcolm Turnbull. I think the same sentiments there for Boris. They're willing him to succeed, but not many believe in it. And of course, Scott Morrison was able to bring the outlying cranky Conservatives back in under the umbrella, and we saw what happened at the election result. Just quickly on the election, are the Tories scared of going early if they have to in order to get Brexit? And what would be the likely result, James, do you think, across the British electorate? I mean, this would be almost a de facto referendum again.
It would be a de facto referendum, and that's the danger in bit for Boris, because he also needs to get those Tory Remainers to vote for him and stick with him. And some of the Remainers, I won't say they're like the Taliban, but they're almost like the Taliban in terms of fighting away in the foothills as such. He needs to make sure it is all about him versus Corbyn, but he's also got to look at the different nations that effectively make up the United Kingdom. You've got Ruth Davidson up in Scotland, who is a very different Tory, very grassroots, very earthy, not a fan of Boris, but she's incredibly popular in Scotland. You'd want her to run for a Westminster seat so she can get that 25-30% of Scots who believe in lower taxes and things like that to vote. You've got to look, they've got no chance in Northern Ireland just because of the way the parties there are so sectarian, what they can do in Wales. But it looks in terms of England, what's going to happen in the Midlands where all those swing seats are, what's going to happen in London. And remember with Boris, he's energised the grassroots, but also he energises people also. He was mayor of a Labor city. London is Labor. It's not a Tory city. He can get people who don't traditionally vote Tory to vote for him, and he can get Tories, the grassroots, to come and vote for him. And that is so important. And this is why who he puts around the cabinet table, that message, that discipline that he can bring to the campaign, which he can do so well, but also it's his personality. And I've said before, he's like a Labrador. People want someone who they can be, who want a politician who they can pat and be nice to, because Theresa May, bless her, very capable, but just didn't have that warmth or that emotion. And Boris is the antithesis of Theresa May.
Yeah, and look, he's the antithesis of a carbon cutout politician. Just before we go, I know you're a student of British politics and obviously a practitioner of Australian politics. I did have to laugh today. In Zali Steggall's maiden speech to the Parliament, the new member for Warringah calls herself an independent. I think she's anything but she was invoking the spirit in her own speech of Margaret Thatcher. Surely the Liberal Party is not going to be stupid enough to let her join and run under their standard at the next election, James.
Look, I don't like commenting on other divisions of the Liberal Party, but I'll say something especially about Warringah, having, with what happened there with Tony, over a lot of dead bodies, I would suspect, and Mrs T will be spinning in her grave at the thought of someone like Zali pretending to hold that Thatcherite flame. I mean, it's almost offensive.
Yeah, well, I think it is offensive. James McGrath, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thanks, Peter. Toodaloo.